Hello, 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 and welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to talk about core wounds. Um, I'm going to ask in advance that you please bear with me because I'm still fighting bronchitis after dealing with sinus infection. So I'm going to probably have a few coughs here and there, but I don't really want to wait 6 weeks to 2 months for this cough to go away before I keep making videos. So I'm just going to try to push through it. I really apologize in advance. I felt compelled to make this video today, so let's get to it. Core wounds. What brought me to this? So I put up a video already about my dysfunctional marriage to a narcissist. That is not what brought me revelation in my life as to why, or I didn't even know what a narcissist was then. I didn't know that I had a cycle of attracting the same type of people yet. It took years to figure out that this was a pattern for me. And to be perfectly honest, the light bulb didn't come on until it wasn't even my last dealing with a narcissist, but one of my more recent encounters with a narcissist within the past couple years, I'll just say. I finally got to a point because I do have fearful avoidant attachment style, still dealing with working through that. I'm okay with not being in a relationship. I can really immerse myself into my career or other goals and dreams and be okay with not being in a relationship. I don't have to be attached to a person 24/7. Um, but I was getting too extreme with it. And I finally got to a point where I had a cancer scare. And I decided, well, maybe I'm not living my best life. And what if I die tomorrow? I had so many thoughts going through my head. So I decided to date. I just really was going through a crisis, right? I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how much time I had left. And I thought I've been kind of just absorbing myself into my career. And maybe I should stop being, so walled off from love and romance. And maybe I should try to give it a try and go on a date, see what it's like. And so I did. Of course, I would be attracted to just a random narcissist, which of course I figured out after the fact. What was happening was traumatic reenactment. So I got involved in a very short time frame with someone that fits the profile of an emotionally unavailable, possibly dismissive, avoidant, possible narcissist. And I felt that traumatic reenactment going on. I didn't even know what that was then. Didn't even know what was happening. I just felt this is familiar. What's happening right now? So basically, he came in the package of, he was checking off my boxes, not all of them, but enough of them, right, to get my attention. And now I know why, right? Because he was a narcissist or emotionally unavailable. But he was love bombing me. He was love bombing me. And of course, I didn't even know what love bombing technically was then, but I was getting sucked into it, right? But at the same time, I had my wall up because I'm fearful avoidance. So I was kind of like, ooh, I like it. Ooh, I don't know. And he was, future faking and love bombing and making all these plans. And I known him for a long time, but not on that level of dating. And he was just throwing out all these ideas for the future and, putting ideas of a relationship in my head. And we were just dating, but it was still planting the seeds and putting these ideas and thoughts in my head so he could gaslight me later is what he was doing. Anyway, when I when my fear of abandonment kicked in and I literally went off on him one day because I realized he was playing games and playing switcheroo and changing. He was gaslighting me. And when it occurred to me that's what was happening, I literally just went off. I probably made myself look like a psycho, and I admit that. But I couldn't put it into terms what he was doing, but I knew what he was doing to me was wrong, and I knew he was playing manipulation and mind games with me because it was so familiar and I had been there before. And again, it was that traumatic reenactment. And I was thinking, something's not right about this. So I just literally went off. I went off. That was the last time I ever spoke to this person. So one thing he said during that conversation was, "Are you trying to sabotage this?" I was like, "No." Well, those words stuck in my head, after our last conversation ever in life. I'll probably never speak to him again, or he'll never speak to me again. Those words resonated with me. And I thought, maybe I am trying to sabotage it. Although he was gaslighting me and he was probably a narcissist and emotionally unavailable, dismissive, avoidant. But at the same time, he wasn't wrong about that either, right? So I kind of had to turn the mirror around and look at myself and think, A, what's attracting me to these types of men? B, is he right about that? Am I trying to sabotage this? And why? Because I'm fearful avoidant, but I didn't really know that then. So that's what really caused me to do a deep dive, like post-mortem analysis on the situation. So when I really figured out what traumatic reenactment was and why I kept kind of going through the same things with different people or attracting the same kind of guy over and over and over and over again and seeing these same patterns replay is because of traumatic reenactment. And I don't really want to go too deep into that now, but that's what triggered me doing a deep dive and figuring out what my core wounds were. But basically, traumatic reenactment, it makes you kind of go into replay so that your core wound, because your core wounds inside are unhealed, your unhealed core wounds want your attention. So it'll kind of like keep this program running, and you'll keep attracting this dysfunction to your life subconsciously, so you can keep making this wound come up because it wants to be healed. It's like a subconscious program that's running all the time. So this wound was coming back up. It's saying, "Hey, I'm still here. I want to be healed, and this is how I'm letting you know. I'm going to keep replaying this program over and over and over until you figure this out." And then the light bulb came on. So what's my core wound? What is a core wound? Well, I'm here to talk about that right now. And that's the whole point of this video. I have more to come, but that's what I want to talk about right now. In that case, what triggered me was my core wound of fear of abandonment. Now I know now that is a real fear of mine. And that is because I was literally abandoned as a child by my father. He gave me up. And on top of that, my mother, I'm not saying she was a bad mother, but she was a teenage mother. She had me as a very young teenager, so she didn't really know how to be a mother yet. So what do teenage mothers do? They're always putting their kids off on their parents. In my case, my grandmother, my abuelita. They're pawning, you're so young, you're still living your teenage best life. You're pawning your kids off on your parents or your mom. And, I'd get left over there for days, weeks at a time. So this abandonment wound was born, right? So I found this website that actually goes through a host of core wounds, and I'm going to link the description below because you can take a quiz there. It's really cool. I'm not endorsing the entire website. I have no affiliation with this website, but there is a way to take the quiz there and find out what your core wounds are, which is step one to getting healed, right? So I admit to the whole world, one of my core wounds is fear of abandonment. And that's why I'm fearful avoidant. I'd rather just not even deal with relationships because I don't have to deal with that core wound. I'm good with just, being solo, right? Okay, so bear with me. I'm just going to read off of here. That's why I got my reading glasses on because I'm a grandma. We need our reading glasses. Okay, if you have the abandonment wound, it is basically because you're emotionally or physically abandoned as a child. This often results in anxious attachment. So a lot of times, basically what that means, if you are abandoned as a child in one form or the other, you might end up being anxiously attached. So you grow up and you always have to be in a relationship. You have to you can never be alone. You're anxious when you're alone. You constantly have to be with your mate. When you break up with one mate, you constantly have to go into another relationship because you need to get validation from your partner. That's what anxious attachment is. And fearful avoidant is kind of a mixture of anxiously attached and dismissive avoidant. It's a pretty strange attachment style. There's various reasons why I ended up with that attachment style, but usually the abandonment wound ends up making you anxiously attached. The funny thing is, another thing I'm going to throw in there, my whole channel, dealing with narcissism. A lot of anxiously attached people end up attracting narcissists. So that's what can make you a narcissist magnet. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. You are loved and nurtured for a while, and you come to depend on this. And then at some point, your parent withdrew from you emotionally because you were open and vulnerable as a result of having been loved. It was especially hurtful to have the connection broken. It could be that your mother was hospitalized for a while and couldn't be there for you. It could be that a parent was absent because they worked a lot. Or it could be that your parents divorced and your father left you. I mean, this happens in our society on a regular basis, right? Or it could be that a sibling was born and your mother's attention went to that child instead of you. That's a very common scenario. Perhaps your parents stopped being loving and nurturing because of some shift in their life or they didn't even know about. Another possibility is that your parent was inconsistent in their caring. Could be that they were drinking or depressed. Another thing too, they might have just been dealing with their core wounds. They had some internal conflict going on, and it took away from nurturing and caring for you like they should have. So many things, but as a child, you can't really calculate all that's going on. You just feel the abandonment, and that's that, right? Next, exploitation wound. For me, this is one of my wounds. I'm just being transparent, putting it out there because maybe you can relate. If you have the exploitation wound, it's because your parents used you to take care of their needs when you were a child. Your parents may have asked you to console them, validate them, and help them with adult situations or emotions. They may have used you to take care of them instead of them taking care of you, which is what should have happened. They may have been overly invested in your life because they were trying to live through you. They may have been they may have demanded directly or indirectly that you perform in certain ways so that they could feel good about themselves. For instance, pushing you to be a star athlete or child beauty queen. They might even have used you to do work around the home that they should have been taken care of. As a parent, they may have treated you as a confidant or a substitute spouse. Now, this is funny because this is exactly my childhood. My mother, again, she was a teenage mother. No shade on her. I mean, she really did try her best. But she used to call me her house husband because she worked 2 or 3 jobs. She never took welfare or anything like that. Even though she only had a 9th grade education, she was always working, which of course added to my abandonment wound. And I stayed home and did all the cooking, cleaning, laundry, turning all the white clothes pink. So I had no idea what I was doing. I was cooking when I was in elementary school. She never learned to cook. She still doesn't know how to cook to this day because I did all that. She never learned to this day how to cook. She would use me as her confidant because she kind of looked at me as her sister instead of her daughter. People would come to our house when I was in high school, and she was also a very tiny woman. I'm a lot taller than her. They'd come to our house and ask her where her mother was because they thought I was the mother. And I am still her mother to this day. I'm her mother. It's funny because she'll even tell you that. I took on the role of responsibility. I was, trusted with adult information way beyond my years. Well, this left me with an exploitation wound. I could have never told you that I had that, but I'm learning that I do. And it's really not healthy to saddle your kids with that much responsibility. A little, of course, chores and a little responsibility around the house is absolutely great for your children, but don't make them your substitute spouse, right? Or your best friend. There's boundaries. There should be healthy boundaries in your household. The next one for me is attack wound. If you have the attack wound, it is because you were hit or yelled at or physically abused as a child. Perhaps one of your parents flew into rages and terrified you. Perhaps you were threatened with harm. Maybe a parent beat you or slapped you. Another possibility is that you witnessed a lot of anger and rage in your family, or you saw your siblings or one of your parents being abused by the other parent. You may have been exposed to the violence of gangs or war or terrorism. So that's another way you can get the attack wound. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I was like physically abused as a child. I mean, yes, I did get the belt. I did get the switch. I will say, yeah, I would get slapped in the face. Absolutely. I've been called names. I'm not going to say that's the best thing to do to your children. But I also saw, like when I finally did meet my father, I saw his wife abuse him. Yes, that happens. I saw my mother get abused by one of her 5 husbands, very dysfunctional, but saw that happen. And I also grew up in an area with the very unsafe area. Let me just put it like that. Very unsafe area, drug dealers and machine guns, and we'd hear machine guns going off in the middle of the night, and like, it's just another, shooting. The things that I would think were normal as a child, now that I think back as an adult, I'm like, really? I don't even know how I survived my childhood, but I did. Barely. Next, for me personally, the basic deficiency wound. If you have the basic deficiency wound, you believe that you are fundamentally flawed. Something happened to you as a child to instill this belief. You may have been judged or shamed in a way that made you feel worthless. You may have been treated in such a way as to cause you to believe that you didn't have the right to exist. You may believe that you were born with an intrinsic psychopathology that makes you bad or broken. This wound can also come about because someone caused you pain as a child. And you believe this happened to you because there was basically something wrong with you. Now, as a child, I suffered from molestation by 2 family members. So I think that contributed to that right there. And I know countless people can identify with that. Now, there are several other wounds. The betrayal wound. Maybe some of you can identify with some of these. The betrayal wound. If you have the betrayal wound, it is because you were betrayed as a child. You had your trust violated by someone important to you, usually one of your parents. Your parent may have promised you things like emotional or financial support, then they never delivered. They may have pried into your personal life or shared your personal private information with people outside your family. Um, you may have shared something personal with a parent only to find that he or she used it against you later. Some parents can be very manipulative. A parent might have been very loving at times, with which engendered your trust, and then nasty and abusive at other times, leaving you feeling betrayed. A parent may have left you in the care of someone who harmed you, for instance, leaving you under the care of an older cousin who molested you, and that might have left you with a betrayal wound. The need wound. If you have the need wound, it is because you were deprived or neglected as a child. Your primary caregiver, usually your mother, didn't give you enough love, nurturing, caring, touch, or feeding. You may not have been fed when you were hungry or picked up or held when you needed it. Your parents may have taken care of you physically, but not given you enough love. This often results in anxious attachment. Again, that would make you a narcissist magnet. This is especially painful if it happened when you were an infant or a toddler, which 9 times out of 10 you're not even going to remember, but it's programmed into your subconscious that this happened to you. We all have the basic need to be loved and cared for, and if this need didn't get met sufficiently, we end up feeling empty, needy, sad, and not really connected to our mother or father or other caretaker. We spend our lives longing for this kind of deep connection and feeling the intense pain of not having gotten it. That would definitely leave you with an anxious attachment style and constantly seeking that from other people if you didn't get it from your parents. The rejection wound, or as we call it in the church, because I'm a Christian, the spirit of rejection. Because a lot of this is a spiritual thing too, right? But here we go. If you have the rejection wound, it is because when you were a child, you were not responded to when you reached out for connection with your parents, other adults, or peers. You weren't appreciated or liked enough. People pushed you away, ignored you, or weren't available when you wanted to connect with them. Your peers may have chosen other kids to be friends with. These rejections made you feel that you weren't lovable or even likable, and that there was something wrong with you that made other people not want to connect with you. Just a rejection movement or a spirit of rejection. The unlovable wound. If you have the unlovable wound, it is because when you were a child, you were rejected, again, dismissed, neglected, deprived, or abandoned, again, or otherwise treated as if you weren't lovable. Since you weren't given the love that every child deserves, you believed that you didn't deserve to be loved. You may have been criticized in a way that said or implied that you weren't lovable or likable. Something may have happened to you to cause you pain as a child, and you believe that this was because you weren't lovable. Your parents may have favored one of your siblings, or they may have been too caught up in each other or in their work or social lives to give you the quality attention you needed, and you assumed that it was your fault. And that is the crazy thing about all of this. Whenever something happens to us that's adverse, we always internalize it and feel like we did something wrong to deserve that, or we feel like it's our fault. We put the blame on us almost every time. It's crazy. The violation wound. If you have the violation wound, it's because you were intruded on at a body level and your boundaries weren't respected. This might have come through the unwanted sexual energy, force feeding, unnecessary enemas, or even sexual abuse. A parent might have given you too much affection or physical closeness that wasn't tuned to your needs, and they didn't heed your attempts to set limits. You may have been induced into accepting physical attention that you really didn't want because it was the only way for you to get any love or caring. That's pretty deep. Wow. The domination wound. If you have the domination wound, it is because you were controlled and dominated as a child. This made you feel that you were at the mercy of the parent who controlled you. They may have been a strict disciplinarian, or they may have been overprotective, not allowing you to make your own decisions about your life, even when you were mature enough to do that. The parent may have rewarded you only when you did what they wanted and punished you when you tried to have some autonomy. They may have constantly given you tasks to do, making you feel like a slave rather than a valued child. We don't want to dominate our children. Definitely do not. You're going to leave them with a wound when you do that. The not seen wound. If you have the not seen wound, it is because your parents didn't understand or appreciate you for who you really were as a child. Your parents may have only seen your externals and not your true self. They may have focused on your achievements and your looks. Don't do that. And not on your unique interests, talents, hopes, and dreams. I think I have the not seen wound because that's really, I hate that. Your family may have loved you, but simply not fully understood your inner self. You may have been smarter than your family or talented in that area, but they didn't understand that, or they disparaged. You may have been discouraged from pursuing things you cared about in favor of things that your family valued. Your family may also have implied that some of your interests or desires weren't okay. You may have a sibling who was valued over you for their achievements or who got the attention and appreciation. The shame wound. Excuse me. If you have the shame wound, it is because you are humiliated as a child. You may have been ridiculed, laughed at, or embarrassed. You may have been exposed in public in a way that mortified you. You may have been caught in a compromising situation. Someone may have judged you in a way that made you believe your actions were shameful. The guilt wound. If you have the guilt wound, this may come your family castigating you for violating their moral beliefs, or you may have grown up in a family where guilt was commonly used as a way to influence people. Your natural way of being might go against the moral norms of your culture or subculture. You may have been repeatedly made to feel guilty by a parent for your actions. A parent may have blamed you for his or her emotional problems. You may have hurt people and you were never forgiven. Last one for now. The judgment wound. If you have the judgment wound, it is because you were criticized repeatedly or harshly as a child. You may have been compared negatively to your siblings or peers instead of being appreciated for your unique qualities. A parent may have repeatedly told you that you were doing wrong and not appreciated for what you did well. You may have been shamed or told that something was wrong with you. You may have been made to feel guilty or told that you were inadequate, stupid, ugly, worthless, lazy, or unlovable. A parent may have tried to help you with homework or teach you something, then got angry and judgmental when you didn't learn it fast enough. You may have been expected to perform at a level beyond your maturity level and made to feel bad when you couldn't. I mean, I can really see a lot of these being pretty common in our society. But the problem is when you have these core wounds deep inside that never get exposed, they try to come to the surface, but we just have a natural tendency to just push them back down, suppress them, ignore them, and then keep going on our lives with our dysfunctional relationships. Go through traumatic reenactment and be like, push it down, ignore it. And never really address the core wounds that keep trying to bubble to the surface. So there's a reason why things keep trying to get your attention. Like in my case, at some point it's going to demand your attention, and you're going to have to stop, take a mirror, and look at yourself, figure out what core wounds you're dealing with. You know, open up that Pandora's box and do some self-reflection and get to the bottom of those core wounds so you can heal them. And then you can move on and progress to healthier relationships, because as we've talked about in one of my other videos, and I'm sure you've come across several other videos or reading material that shows you your attachment style, if you have an unhealthy attachment style, can be changed to a healthy attachment style. But it takes inner work, working on those core wounds, healing, and time, of course. But all of this goes together in our healing journey. So I just wanted to talk about core wounds today. I'll be back to talk about something else next time. I made it through the video without coughing too much. I'm so excited. I hope that this was beneficial. I'll link the website to the description, and so you can take the test and figure out what your core wounds are so you can start your path to healing them. Thanks so much for your time today. Be blessed and have a great night, morning, day, whatever time it is when you decide to look at this video. Thanks for being here. Talk to you later.